Hey everybody, it's Jack with Future Pastimes, and we're reading Dune. And this is a really fun chapter. We're still on Gidi Prime, and it's a nice scene between the Baron and Thufir Hawat. And what's happening here is Thufir is trying to get the Baron up to speed on this plan about how Arrakis is really analogous to Seleucus Secundus in terms of making the natives there very hardy and versatile, powerful warriors. The secret to why the Sardaukar are such great soldiers is because they have been put through the ringer on the Emperor's prison planet, Seleucus Secundus. And 60% of the prisoners there just die because they are put in harsh conditions, and they are probably tortured and beaten and whatnot. And anybody who is able to withstand that is then given military training and invited into the elite imperial army known as the Sardaukar. And Thufir believes that the Fremen, because of the conditions on Arrakis and because of the decades of mistreatment by the Harkonnens and anybody who was running the spice production on Arrakis for the centuries before that, the Fremen are very strong fighters. And the Baron he is not really quite ready to believe it. It takes a while for Thufir to get through to him. And what's really funny about this chapter is that we're getting some of the inner thoughts and monologues of both characters and how they just hate the other one. Thufir hates the Baron, has for as long as he can remember. The Baron can't wait to get to the point where he can just have Thufir killed, but he realizes he kind of needs him as he begins to finally understand what it is that Thufir is getting at. And so it's a little bit of a power play, and we're getting some insight in how Thufir is still trying to work against the Harkonnens. He very much wants to take them down, but he wants to take the Emperor down too, and ultimately get his revenge for what has happened to House Atreides. And we learned some interesting details. For instance, that Thufir knows that Gurney Halleck is still alive and that he's with the smugglers. And it's because the Harkonnens have a bunch of spies on Arrakis, and Thufir is hooked up into that network. And Thufir probably still has his own contacts on Arrakis that are feeding him information. And certainly Gurney is giving him information as well, discreetly. So the Baron almost certainly is not privy to the fact that Gurney is alive and hiding with the smugglers. But it's really interesting how this conversation unfolds. And we get some insight into the Baron, and as smart and as clever and as schemy as the Baron is, he's no match for Thufir, and Thufir just sees him as a bit of a fool. And so I really enjoy getting that extra depth from these characters. So Thufir is able to drag out of the Baron the conversation that he had had 2 years prior with Count Fenring, where the Baron made an offhand remark about maybe turning Arrakis into his own prison planet because he's so inspired by the Emperor. And Fenring shuts that down and, threatens the Baron in an earlier chapter. And so the Baron was like, it wasn't a serious suggestion. And so he sort of dismissed it, but now he remembers it. And Thufir is like, tell me exactly what you said. And the Baron is like, cool your jets, and I'll do my best. And so, yeah, it's all part of this thing. And because the Baron is like, he doesn't even suspect that that's how the Sardaukar are basically created. But Thufir is like, I'm pretty sure that's the key to how this works, because The emperor is very secretive about the planet. He's not secretive that he has a prison planet, but he doesn't want to answer any questions. He doesn't go into detail about what goes on there. It's not made clear to anybody where the Sardaukar come from, and the Baron has just assumed, well, it's just normal training, and then the people who are the best through the normal training process get made into Sardaukar. And Duffer's like, no, I don't think so. I don't think that's what it is. And so he makes his case, and eventually the Baron starts to believe. And the other big thing is Duffer lets him know that however many Fremen they think they're on there, it's off by a factor of 10 or more, that there are millions of Fremen on Arrakis, and that blows the Baron's mind. And so they're like, the Baron's like, what do we do here? And Duffer cautions him. He's like, look, we don't want the Emperor to think that this is what you're doing, that you are conditioning the Fremen to become an army, because he will come in here, swoop down on Giedi Prime and wipe you off the map. And the Baron's like, he wouldn't dare. And Duffer's like, oh, yes, he would. So he's like, what you need to do is you basically need to cut off Rabban and not help him out with anything. Ignore all of his requests for more supplies and Harkonnen workforce, but keep raising the quotas and keep demanding more spice. And basically, Rabban is just going to mistreat the workforce as he's struggling to keep up. And then Duffer's like, and then we'll replace him. And the Baron's like, well, I already have a plan in mind for that. And Duffer's like, oh, yeah, Fade, I see where you're going. So he's like, yeah, that tracks. He'll come in as a savior, and which is what the Baron wanted to do anyway. So it's like I said, it's a fun chapter. I love seeing Duffer go toe to toe with somebody. And just the way that he treats the Baron. The Baron is not normally treated this way, and that is really at the heart of why he's like, I cannot wait to kill this Mentat. But again, he realizes for now, he needs the Mentat, which he's kind of was on that same track with Piter. He was like, I got to kill Piter soon, but I realize I still need him. But then that decision was taken out of his hands by the Duke. So yeah, I enjoyed this chapter. It's kind of setting up what's going to happen. The other thing that comes into this chapter, is the mention of the Fremen leader and a sort of religious leader who is stirring things up. And Duffer's like, yeah, we probably should have dealt with that earlier, but it is what it is now. So it'll just kind of feed into it. Anytime you've got a populace that is so poorly treated, they tend to turn to religion, and so that's going to be the case here. And the cat's already out of the bag, so let them do it. But one of the things that Duffer doesn't share with the Baron is how he feels like all of these attacks, the nature of the attacks that the Fremen are making on Harkonnen spice operations, reminds him of Duncan, Idaho, and it reminds him of Atreides' tactics. And he's like, if I didn't know any better, I would even think that maybe Paul is still alive. But he just doesn't allow himself to hope that, because he still feels quite certain that Lady Jessica was the traitor, and the Baron keeps confirming it. And he feels like, yeah, it was a total betrayal, and even to the point where she allowed her own son to be killed if she didn't outright kill him herself. And he's just like, yeah, she just must have been one really cold woman who, with just a pure hatred of House Atreides. And he thinks, the same way that I hate House Harkonnen. And so it's really, it's kind of gut-wrenching that Duffer doesn't know, that Paul is alive, and he doesn't know the truth of what unfolded in Arrakeen back when the Harkonnens attacked. So it's a fairly short one, but I love these exchanges between powerful characters. I've always enjoyed Thufir Hawat. He's a mentat. If you give him a lot of data, he can really make it work. But when he's missing some data, it doesn't quite doesn't quite play out the way that mentats hope that it would. And then how much that the Baron really relies on having a mentat to bounce ideas off him and to help develop good strategies. So he's trying to take advantage of Doofer, but he realizes that he's holding a scorpion and hoping that it doesn't sting him, and knowing that inevitably, he can't trust Doofer completely. He knows that this, at the end of the day, is still an Atreides, and it's interesting how long he feels like he can string Thufir along and get useful advice and data out of him. So that's it for this chapter. Let me know your thoughts on it. And this hasn't been adapted, of course, because they didn't really have any scenes between Thufir and the Baron, other than the one where they let him know that he had the residual poison in him in the Lynch movie, which they didn't really tell him in the book. They don't say, yeah, we've got this poison, and if we keep the antidote from you, you'll die. Although Thufir's smart enough to know that that's probably the case, but they just haven't come right out and said it. And in the miniseries, they didn't capture Thufir in the miniseries. So I'm hoping that the Villeneuve movie does have some scenes like this. We know that Thufir's in it, and hopefully it's more than just a cameo at the end, but we'll see. So let me know your thoughts and your theories, and thanks for reading, and we'll see you again soon.